I was supposed to wrestle Barry Windham in the main event on a Tuesday night in Tampa, which was our town. We were running in Daytona, and I'm wrestling with Kendall. And they came in, they said, we want you to put Kendall over. And I said, do you know I'm wrestling Barry Tuesday? And we had a blood feud. And they said, yeah. I said, so what you doing is fighting me. They said, oh, no, we're not fighting you. We just want to surprise the people. I said, okay. So they said, whatever finish you want to do, go ahead and do it as long as it's clean. I said, okay. So I said to Mark, this is the finish we're going to do. Kendall Windham. At that time, as John knows, I squatted 800 pounds. I said, I'm going to have Kendall Windham put me in the figure 4, Mark. And when he does, you run in. And as I tap out, he's going to small package you. He'll stand up and small package you, and he'll beat both of us at the same time. Well, you could have heard a pin drop when he beat it. Kendall turned into be a hell of a worker, but he weighed about 160 pounds.
Yeah.
And Mark was a monster. The people knew there was something wrong. So I come back to the dressing room, and my dear friend Bill Alfonso says to me, you're fired. I said, okay. That's fine.
You kind of knew it was going to happen, yeah.
Yeah, I said, that's fine. I'm the guy that gave you the money to buy your first house, and you lied to me, but I understand you're in the wrestling business, so okay.
And so within, I think the next TV he was on, he did a thing with Steve Kern where he had his back to the camera, and Steve Kern was on the other side of him. He had Steve Kern pull his tights down, his trunks. So it's just his bare ass sticking out at the camera. And then he pulled his tights back up, and that was on TV. Now, you have to edit that. And one of the things is that we were bicycling tapes, and it needed to go out immediately, like that day. So Dave Togi, the guy that was doing our all the filming and all the editing and all that, was going to have to work overnight. He was going to have to work to get that out of there. And right after that happened, I was on a Wednesday, and Harold came into the office. I was in the inner part of the office. He came in where it was just me and him, and he said, I want you to fire Kevin. I want you to fire Sullivan. I said, I will. I'm going to. I said, but we have a big show. That was Wednesday. We had a big show in Daytona Beach on Friday or Saturday. I think it was Friday, but it doesn't matter. We had a big show. Now, that was on Wednesday, the pants down. On Thursday, we went to Jacksonville. We worked in Jacksonville. And Jacksonville at one time had been a great town. When I first broke in, it was a Thursday night town. It was a great big coliseum. The houses were always decent. Don Curtis was the promoter, the local promoter there, and lived there with his wife. And Dottie had two great people, just great, nicest people in the world. And Kevin and Mark went out in the ring. And Jacksonville, it's like a big theater. So there's a stage and there's a curtain, you go open the curtain for a play. And I was watching from the stage, and not just one of the boys, all the boys came down and were from one part or another, were watching the match. And I realized something was going on. And so I watched, of course, I was watching too. And Mark and Kevin went out there and did that Three Stooges stuff where you go poke the guy in the eye, and he puts up his hand, and, they just clowning around out there. Just so wrong. You're not just crapping on, the promotion. You're helping kill the town for all the boys. And the boys watching that, half of them were amused. They didn't realize that that's their future income that's being dealt with there. Those guys go out there hurting the town like that. So I still didn't fire. We had a big show. They both had an important match in Daytona. Mark went out and worked first. He was asking, well, am I let go? I said, just go do your match. Let's see. So with Kevin, now Kevin was working with Kendall Windham in Orlando, like on Sunday, and this is Friday night. Orlando's only, I don't know, 30, 40 miles from Daytona. It doesn't make sense for Kevin to get beat like just 1, 2, 3. But that's what I had him do. He was with Kendall, and I was going to fire him that night, but they didn't know that. I didn't want them to know because if I fire them, they wouldn't finish their bookings. They just leave. I knew that. So I didn't want to hurt the towns anymore, and I had to. I'm talking to Kevin. I give him the finisher. Kendall beats him right in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3. And he's the one that asked me, well, am I getting fired? And I said, well, should you be? And he couldn't answer. So after I gave him the finish, I went, and especially after Lewin's match, I went out and sat in the audience on the other side, away from the dressing room. And I hadn't wrestled in so long that nobody paid any attention to me. But I didn't want to be available for any questioning. And Kevin went out there and had a match with Kendall Windham. Now, Kevin had been doing the Prince of Darkness stuff with all meat chop. I hated it. No, nobody ever got a hold, like hit the ring, chop, meat, chop, 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 kick, bite, kick, blood. To me, I thought, I said, Kevin, you could get brand new guys that could come out and do this. They wouldn't have to know how to work at all. But that was it. That was what he wanted. Well, anyway, he went out with Kendall, and instead of doing the meat chopping, he had a match with him with like high spots and, wrestling and, hit the ropes and take tackles and stuff. They hadn't done, I hadn't seen him do for ever as the Prince of Darkness. He had a good match with him. And of course, Kendall beat him 1, 2, 3. And I met him at the hallway leading to the dressing room. I was there waiting for him. So he came in. I said, and I'm sorry, this sounds like I don't mean to be cruel, but I couldn't help it. But now think about it. Mm-hmm. Bear Ass on TV, mm-hmm. doing the Three Stooges in Jacksonville. He'd been rubbing it in my face for 2 days and showing in front of all the boys in 2 shows. And I put up with it. That's why I'm saying that I give myself a little slack, and what I did was kind of nasty. But I said, gosh, Kevin, and he'd also asked me before his match, he said, am I getting fired? And I told him, well, should you be? And he didn't answer. So when he came back, I said, well, Kevin, I said, good match, man. He said, I forgot you knew how to work. And I said, and by the way, yeah, you are fired.